Welcome to another Flip video lesson. This is for chapter 9.3. In fact, this is the first video in a series that is based upon the three branches of our government. Today's lesson will go over the legislative branch. The legislative branch can be found in the first article of the U.S. Constitution. And based on this article, the legislative branch is made up of two houses. We have the House of Representatives and the Senate. And these two houses work together to create the laws and taxes that can be found to rule our country. Now, let's start our video with going over the House of Representatives. Now, the House of Representatives is made up of 435 representatives that are split among the 50 states of our country. Now, the House is based upon population, and as we've talked about repeatedly over this trimester, this was done to appease the larger states. If you take a look at this picture right here, you can see quite clearly which states have the most representatives. You can also see how many states have the exact same amount of representatives. It's a very interesting picture right here. I encourage you to pause the video and take a close look at it. Now, there are also 6 non-voting members in the House. An example of this would first off be the District of Columbia, that's Washington, D.C. Then there's Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, something to think about is this. Why is it important that we have these 6 non-voting members? I want you to pause the video, maybe go ask your parents this question. See if they know anything about Puerto Rico, American Samoa, and Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And then ask them why it's important that they have representatives, but that these places, representatives can't vote in the House. People in the House of the Representatives are elected every 2 years. They must be at least 25 years old, and they have to be a citizen of their state for at least 7 years. Something to think about. With a shorter term, people in the House should focus more on immediate concerns of the people, because if they don't fix things that the people want right now, the people vote them out. So really, the House of Representatives' focus is helping and changing the wishes of the people, and it's the immediate wishes of the people. I can't stress enough that the House of Representatives really focuses on the here and now of our country, because that's what the people want. People are funny that way. People usually only focus on what's happening to them at this very moment. The House of Representatives has several unique responsibilities that only occur in the House. For example, they're the ones that start revenue bills, also known as taxes. They are also the ones that impeach federal judges. Also, it is the House of Representatives that elect the president in case of an electoral college tie. So these are powers that are unique to only the House of Representatives. About the Senate now, shall we? The Senate has 100 senators, which means that there are 2 senators from each state. The Senate was supposed to appease and make the smaller states happy, whereas the House, again, was to appease and make the larger states happy. A senator must be at least 30 years old and have been a citizen of their state for 9 years. People in the Senate are supposed to be wiser and more experienced as opposed to the people in the House. You may be wondering why they should be a little more wiser and more experienced. I'll answer that question shortly. Senators are elected for 6 years. So they have 4 extra years that the people in the House do not have. And this is because they need to be given more leeway to think of how certain bills and laws affect the future of the country. Whereas people in the House of Representatives think about what citizens want right now, people in the Senate are supposed to think about the future of our country when they're thinking about the laws and taxes. They're supposed to go, is this law really good for our country? We know the people really want it, but in like 3 or 4 years, how will it affect us? So people in the Senate don't have to worry about being kicked out of their job if they don't make the people happy right away. Powers that are unique to the Senate are as follows. First off, people in the Senate confirm presidential appointments. Now, President can go, Mr. Mint, I think you would make a great Secretary of Agriculture. He then would go to the Senate, and the Senate would say either yes, he would make a good Secretary of Agriculture, or no, he'd make a horrible Secretary of Agriculture. The Senate also approves treaties between our country and others. That's a good treaty. Now, we've talked a little bit about the Senate and the House of Representatives, what it takes to become a senator or a House representative, and some of their unique powers and responsibilities they have. Let's talk now about what Congress is known for doing, and that is making laws or bills. Now, there are 7 main steps for a bill to get through Congress to become a law. Please make sure you're jotting these down in your outline, because this is really important for you to know this. First, a bill can be introduced in either House of Congress. It could be the Senate, it could be the House of Representatives. Anyone can write a bill and get the process going to make a law. Next, it then needs to go to this proper subcommittee to be further researched and revised. Now, subcommittees are a small group of people who focus on a very specific aspect of our country. One example is the Subcommittee of Livestock, which is a real thing. After the subcommittee has researched and revised this proposed bill, it then goes on to the main committee. And they do the exact same thing. They revise, they research, and they talk about this bill. An example of a committee is agriculture. So you'd have this big committee of agriculture, and its subcommittee would be livestock. So after the committee goes through and talks about the bill and makes its alterations and changes, the bill then goes back to the House where it was first started. So if the bill started in the House of Representatives, what would happen then is after the committee talked about it, it'd go back to the House. And then that place then would go over and it would make its own changes and alterations to the bill. So you'd have this brand new bill. Then, once the original House has talked about it, it then goes to the other House, which in my example would be the Senate. And then that second House, or the Senate for my example, would look at that bill and they'd make changes and alterations to it. So after this 5th step, you have 2 different bills right now that have gone through several processes. Now, since we have a separate bill from the House and a different bill from the Senate, they need to come together and they need to form one bill. So then they make, you guessed it, another committee. They choose some people from each house to come together to take a look at this bill, these 2 separate bills, and to turn it into one. So why do you think there are so many steps in making a law? What could be some pros and cons to doing this? I'd like you to pause the video for a second and just think about why we'd have 7 steps making a law. Why does it have to take so long and be so difficult? The final step then now is to have the president sign this bill into law. If the president does not like it, Congress has a couple choices. They can go back to the drawing board and tweak it some more and give to the president. Or, if this is something they truly want, they can override the president's veto by having 2/3 of all the people in Congress say that this bill needs to be law. And if that ends up happening, then it's a law, whether or not the president liked it or not. As we've talked about, the main job that Congress has is making laws. But not only do they make the laws, they can also take and change laws a bit too if it looks as if they need to be tweaked. They also levy taxes and tariffs. These tariffs or taxes can be used only for government services. And Congress has to say where the tax money is spent. That's called earmarking. Because we don't want the government spending money on things that we don't know anything about. They also can investigate different matters or items, whether it's things that are going on in the country or within the government itself. Congress declares war. Congress also deals with treaties, as we've talked about. The last thing they do is it has to do with impeachments or, kicking people out of their job. The House is the group of people that start the impeachment process. They're the ones that say, President, you're not doing your job. We're going to impeach you. And then it goes to the Senate, where the Senate actually, they're like the judge. They're the courtroom. They figure out if that group or that person or that judge should in fact be impeached. Well, thank you for watching this flipped homework assignment. The questions will be on Edmodo. Thank you.